So, as Martin said, I am CEO and founder of Shat Tower, but more importantly, I have been delivering projects for over 20 years, all types of technology change, people change, property infrastructure. I've worked in banks and airports, and I have had all the frustrations of chasing data, nobody knowing what's going on, siloed information, and having a lack of visibility, being surprised constantly, and not being able to make effective decisions fast enough to avoid the waste, slippage, or unintended consequences of delivering projects by gut instinct half the time. And obviously at Shat Tower, we are focused on trying to help, predominantly we're looking at business change, operational change, people change, process change, but ultimately projects. How do we make projects more collaborative, make the data more realistic and richer so that we can start doing fancy stuff with predictive analytics. But a lot of it comes down to data storytelling, data visualization that helps people focus and spot problems before they happen. And that's what we're going to touch on tonight quite a bit. Before I start, sorry to do this to you again, you have to get your phone and put in a different Mentimeter code. So it's up the top of the screen there. What I want to know is, what do you think the purpose of project data analytics is? So if you're a project analyst, a BA just now, or if you're someone interested in the advancements in project data analytics, what is the core purpose? So this is a word cloud. I just want you to go to that, submit up to 3, points that you think is the core purpose of project data analytics. What are we here to do? And I'll be interested in that. So if you go into that Mentimeter up there and submit it, I should start seeing results come through. I certainly did when I tested this earlier. Well, there we go. I've got the same problems. Yeah, I tested this beautifully earlier, and the results were coming through as people did it. While you're doing that, I'll just check that it's refreshing. Aha!
There we go. It's working out.
Not really. That's the test data.
Was it?
Here we go. Try reloading it. Or I'll just go to Mentimeter and see it from there.
Was this with the slide integration into the...
Yes, there we go.
All right, cool.
Okay, super. So lots of stuff going on here, changing all the time. So data-driven decisions, decision-making, analysis, accuracy, insights but quite big, communication. We've got a lot of things around the side: risk, reporting, performance, trust data, reduce waste. Nice, I like that. Good. That's its own thing. So insights, decisions, understanding, accuracy, transparency, communication. Good, interesting. I think there's lots of themes in there. I think the core, which comes from insights and decisions there, I think it's insights, the decisions, data-driven decisions, which obviously, if you look around the edges, help us, reduce risk, help us predict things, help us have efficiencies, help us have knowledge and analysis and performance. I think for me, the crux of it comes down to our job is to help people make better decisions towards delivering outcomes. That's what projects are there to do, right? Projects are there to deliver an outcome. Whether that's a new road, a new hospital, whether that's to make people's lives better, to make a customer experience better, to increase sales. We're there to deliver outcomes. And ultimately, what we try to do in project data analytics is help people navigate towards those outcomes better and make decisions along the way. That's our job. Ultimately, we are the Google Maps of projects, if you think of it that way. So Google Maps is a massive big, data solution, right? It's a very, very complex thing. At the end of the day, what's Google Maps' primary job? At the end of lockdown, it's to tell me how quickly I can get to the pub. What's the quickest route, right? And I don't want it to do anything else for me. I just want it to tell me the quickest route to get to the pub. And that's my outcome at the end of lockdown. How do I get to the pub quickest? So for data solutions, especially for projects, our job is often to tell people how to get there in the most optimal route. And then when they hit bumps in the road, how to make decisions better to get back on track towards the optimal route. So all that stuff is right, but it's really useful to see that word cloud. One of the things that is key, it's a bit of a fuzzy picture there, is what's involved in delivering data solutions, or what is involved in data leadership. This is a little framework from the Open Data Institute on their data skills framework. And you see there's actually, not that, there's only a few bits in engineering in the green boxes, and then there's a lot in analysis, which is important. And I think you get a sense of engineering. We've got to engineer data. We've got to make data available, clean, standardized, usable. And then we actually have to spend a lot of time analyzing it. And that is a combination of finding insights, applying statistics, making the data intelligent, so then actually applying machine learning and finding new insights, but also how to visualize, interact with data, and use data analytics, which I think are important themes in the bottom right. But actually, there's also other bits in there, which is, well, you still need design services, you still need leading change and managing risk for it. Creating value is a key bit. And all of what this is showing is there's a huge set of it. So when we look at data solutions, we look at project data analytics, it's not just for analysts. It's not just going to be for business analysts or data analysts or data scientists. It's also going to require strategists. It's going to require change people to communicate and how you absorb that information. It's also going to require design people to make it usable, etc. So one of the things I want to get over tonight is actually, as we create more and more data solutions, we don't want to get into a place where we're creating lots and lots of art of the possible. We're creating lots of complex data solutions and models and analytics, but nobody consumes them. And this is all about how do we make sure that our data solutions are successful and fit and are consumable. And that's going to require a blended skill set. So the first bit I want to really get itchy about is what happens when we present new information that requires us to make decisions. What's really going on when we present people with data and ask them to make decisions? The first thing that's going on is we have to process information. So as humans, we're built to be visual. We process shapes, colors faster than we process text and data, because that's how we evolved. So our visual cortex is built to process visual objects much faster than in text and data. So we're visual beasts by nature. So that's one of the first challenges we're going to come is how do we process information. The other part is what happens when we do start to process that information. And obviously, you'll all know, being in project world, we've spent a long time trying to visualize complex project information. We've tried work breakdown, Gantt charts, critical path, roadmaps, calendars. We've tried risk heat maps. We've tried lots of ways of trying to visualize complex information to make people engage and make it understandable, and to limited success often. And we often have to do a lot of that. But that's our job. We're trying to make things consumable, especially for our stakeholders when engaging project information. Another aspect which I think is really important, and this comes really important, especially as we start to get some really deep insights, as we really start to apply data analytics, and it's particularly as we start to do things such as machine learning. I won't really say AI, but artificial intelligence, really when we start applying machine learning to find new trends, to predict things for us, and to actually suggest next actions for us, we're going to be asking people to process and information a lot faster. We're going to ask them to trust black box models. We can do some things in explainability of machine learning, etc., but that is limited. So we're going to put people in uncomfortable positions. As humans, I'm sure some of you have come across the chimp paradox, or you've read Thinking Fast and Slow. We're not wired to make decisions. We're wired to make ourselves comfortable. We're there to make ourselves survive. So we want to make ourselves have enough food, to make ourselves fat. We want to make ourselves comfortable inside our houses, and etc. A little bit of stress is good for training the body and muscle, but actually making continual decisions all the time and dealing with uncertainty actually brings extreme stress in us, even if we don't realize it half the time. And as the world's become more complex and volatile, we're asking our projects and our businesses and our project teams to make more and more and more decisions, but without the data to support it. So while data analytics and application data can really, really help that decision making, we're still asking people to make decisions and trust. So you've got to really understand what happens to that. And people, as Daniel Kahneman says, it's not a lack of data often makes us make decisions, not make decisions. What makes us make decisions is the stories we tell ourselves and the confidence we do. So as humans, we make safety nets around our information we get to make us convinced and take the leap of faith to make decisions. And that, cognitive load that goes on when we're getting presented information is something we've got to be really careful about when we're thinking about how do we present data analytics and how do people respond to that. And it causes the fight or flight response, I'm sure you've heard. So if I get presented with new information that interrupts me, or is something I don't understand before, or tells me bad news, it's going to cause me to have stress, right? It's going to induce all those acute stress hormones and nervous system reactions that actually have a physiological impact on me. Now, often you don't see it, but it does build up and it happens, and it creates the same reaction you have if you were getting attacked, in the jungle, or if someone was trying to fight with you in the pub. It's the same reactions happen there, but they happen in minute little minutiae. So as you get presented new information that you don't understand or interrupts you or says bad news, it sets your stress factors going. If you don't know what to do with that information, you're built and programmed to run away from it. That's your fight, or to fight it, which is to deny it. So you got to think again, when we present information and we ask people to make decisions, we've got to think really carefully, how do we present data? And you've all heard the story. Nobody wants to be told that their baby's ugly or that their solution's the wrong solution. We all have suffered from projects that tell good news stories upwards, because we're scared that stakeholders will react badly and not give us time to recover or whatever, or won't understand why the project's red, so we hold it in for as long as possible. We have those projects that flip from red to green all the time because of that. Sorry, from green to red, and there's no amber in between. So we're all conscious of it and we're aware of it, but what we've got to think about is how we're presenting information to people. Are we presenting it in a way that they can consume it, that it does, that it is understandable so they don't run away from it, and that they can maybe action it? But just think about it. Think in your daily life, how much decision making do you now give over to your mobile phone? Right? How much decision making do you give over to what news you're going to read, what recommendations you're going to buy off Amazon, how you're going to get to the pub? All these things you've given over these decisions to Google, to Amazon, to news feeds, analysis feeds, etc. Now we can do some of that with data, but if you then think about how much you trust that, then you go into your work. How many times have you been asked to make decisions every day, or asked for updates, or asked to say how are we going to recover this project? You're probably, if you count it on your hand, you're probably doing it tens, hundreds of times a week, being asked to make decisions on estimates, on project risks, on the next best action, or how do you recover? And often you're having to do that in a reactive mode without the data stuff. So you can imagine the types of stress that we're putting ourselves under in a project world. And likewise, when we go back to our stakeholders and ask them to make decisions, are we presenting them with the right information that allows them to make decisions safely? So there's a huge psychological and physiological event that goes on in decision making. The other part, which I'm sure you've all seen, and you've got Porter's 5 forces, or you've got pest analysis, political, economic, social, and technological factors. It's those forces that compete against people making decisions. So you can have the most robust data and the best answer in the world, but you've got to think about who's using that data to make a decision. And you've got to think about the forces that pull them towards a positive action, or pull them back to making probably an inaction. So, if you think, the competing forces that really cause us to change our behaviors, if I lose my job, that's going to push me into a new situation. That's a progressive force that says, actually, I've lost my job, so I'm going to look for a new one. If I hadn't lost my job, would I really go risk it and go find other jobs. I might be unhappy about it, but how many people really make a decision when they're unhappy in a job to jump ship and then go find a new one? Not really. So push-off situations can definitely make us change something. Or, my car's broke down, or my car's blown up, I have to go buy a new car. That pushes me to go make a new behavior, make a decision. Or the pull of a new idea. If we can really convince people of the world is going to be better, there's a new solution, the grass is green over there, that can pull people. More often than not, though, the anxiety of that new solution, well, what's the change impact? Will it really work? Is it worth risking, my job or my reputation, put my head above the parapet to suggest it? What if it doesn't work? So the anxiety of a new solution actually pulls us back. And then our allegiance to the current world is we are, creatures of habit. We want to protect ourselves. We don't want to make decisions. That's how we're wired. So it takes us a lot to break our habits. And you'll all know that if you've tried to create new exercise regimes, try new diets and stuff, our allegiance to our current world holds us back a lot. So there's a lot of competing forces. And while obviously we always talk about these in big change management, these are the same types of forces that happen with everyday decision making and everyday decision making in your projects as well. Another final point I want to touch on competing forces that you really need to think about when we're creating data solutions and how we present information and when we present it and who to, and also so that you don't become frustrated when people don't always follow what your data solutions say. Because, I've spent many years being a business analyst and data analyst and presenting what I thought were absolutely rational cases with, massive amount of supporting data and the business case information. And then people make another decision and that didn't seem rational. And because in a businesses, there's so many competing forces. If you think of the sort of triangle might go in a typical business. So, we've got the business. That business could be a construction company. It could be the government. It could be public sector. It could be FS, whatever. And we're trying to deliver, a complex project. That's going to have an internal project team. It's probably going to have a strategic consultant that's told us how HS2 should be designed and the economic benefits it's going to have for the country. It's going to have tens of thousands of suppliers and vendors, and it's going to be complex. Now, the business in the middle wants an outcome. Once we start engaging the strategic consultant, what do they care about? Well, most of their economic drivers are about statements of work and about getting consultants off of a bench. That's their margins. But obviously, they have to pick their business to an extent, even though they all set off to do the good thing. The supplier and vendor, what do they care about? They really care about their solution. That's what they've got. They have to sell their solution. It has to work. Even if the business context changes, the solution to them is still the most important thing. Internal project teams quite often aren't incentivized on business results. There might be some share schemes, etc., become rarer, but actually, a lot of project teams are incentivized by keeping things green and hitting milestones regardless and delivering projects regardless. So I've been in situations where I've done program assurance and project reviews, and I found projects that were going to add no benefit whatsoever, because the business context changed. And the project team didn't want to hear it because they got measured on delivering projects. They didn't get measured on stopping projects, even if it was the right thing to do. So everybody ends up having a different triangle of incentives that go around what we were trying to do. So you've got to understand that when you're creating data solutions, all these little things, and then the consultants have got their own, triangle of influences. The vendor has, the business have got multiple because you have different business units. Everybody's got different competing forces and incentives of why they do a job and make decisions. And then the very last bit before we get into some of the design stuff concepts is always think about what again is pulling people. And this comes to that bit of that allegiance to the norm, to what we're familiar with. So we are set up in most organizations, and especially if you're involved in change projects, but this comes in the same in anything. If you want to know why public sector aren't biting your hand off to have project analytics, change their job and change all of procurement and change estimate, because they're worried that it's going to change the things they're familiar with. So, first of all, everybody is social. We are aligned to our family, friends, our team. We form teams very, very quickly. And we get disrupted and we worry that, any change is going to change that social team structure that we have, hierarchy. The next thing we align ourselves to is, okay, well, I've got my team and support. So the next thing that's really important to me is role. So, often it's the role that's important to me, the title, but not so much the but it's the processes, the things that are familiar. I know that I'm an SME in it. So obviously anything else that new comes in is, well, if you change my world, if you tell me that, machine learning is going to revolutionize project management, well, what's my role? What's my process? So again, you're disrupting that norm. And then hierarchy and structure. Actually, when there is decision-making processes and things there, but it's okay. That's a safety net for us to protect us a bit. What we're not really aligned to is often actually the outcomes of the business value. That's the sort of the last thing. It's almost the secondary thing. So if you think what you're going to do in project analytics, you're going to try and present unambiguous, unbiased insights onto what's the best thing to do for this project. That could mean disrupting teams, it could mean changing processes, it could change structures, because ultimately what we're trying to do is deliver the best value, make sure that we can get the project delivered for the best value for the customer, for the business, for the government, for the social economic welfare as a whole. So if you're going to present that on the biggest day, you're going to realize that you're going to potentially disrupt these forces that actually people build around themselves. So that is hard enough. And as you know, projects are really, really complex. We're trying to deliver outcomes that relies on business performance. So you're going to produce analytics that shows the business performance that are affecting the project likelihood. People performance, people involved in the project, people receiving the project. The supply chain performance, supply chain costs, throughput. You've got certainty and knowledge. Like, do we know what we're trying to build in the first place? It's the first time we've ever built a bridge to Ireland between Scotland. It was getting proposed. Well, we're not going to have a huge amount of knowledge and certainty of doing that. We'll have some reference projects we can use, but cost of goods, which fluctuate all the time. Again, are you doing project analytics on the cost of goods for estimating that they can change for any reason? It could be weather, source materials, raw materials. It could be political factors, Brexit, for example. Consumer behavior is part of that. Markets, fluctuation, even well-being of people. If we're in the middle of a pandemic, that affects it, but also seasonality, etc. Socioeconomic factors, environment, all these things affect each other. So when you start doing project analytics, what are you going to analyze? And what's the most important thing? Because if you could analyze all of that and present all of that information, and that is going to be hugely overwhelming and very, very difficult for people concerned to consume. And it's going to give, again, all those stress factors. So we've got to be really careful about finding out what's really, really important. And when we are doing analytics on anything, but particularly in projects that are such complex systems, that any one of these factors could be important at any time, but actually identifying what is important and how we supply that information to people. So I'm going to go talk about some design thinking stuff. I'm going to give examples. I'm going to talk through some data visualization. But I thought it's important to try and trigger your thinking about really what happens. Like, we have got the opportunity to deliver really, 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 really great insights and actually transform how businesses make decisions, how governments make decisions, and how projects get delivered efficiently. But we've also got the risk of presenting new insights, faster insights, more information, more decision-making requirements to people that could actually stress them out and overwhelm them. So it's really important that we acknowledge the opportunity we have, but also the risk and also the responsibility we have in data analytics. So last Mentipoll for you in that context, if you put in a different number at the top, and hopefully this will work seamlessly now. I want you to say what's most important when creating project data analytics solutions. So what's most important when you create data solutions? Is it accurate input data? Is it robust predictive models or machine learning models? Is it explainable output? Is it consumability or actionability? Can people take action on it? Or is it timeliness? So go to the thing, vote on that, on your number up there, and I'll be really, really interested in what people think is most important in data solutions. I'll vote as well, just for the fun of it. Right. Let me just refresh that. Should be coming now. Good, a good spread. Where is it? So explainable and actionable output. I'm glad they're the highest. Actually, that's interesting, because actually I think the order you maybe could have led people a different way. So the short answer is they're all important. They're all almost equally important. I think if you want to have good data solutions, the foundation of them, you're going to have to input. If you want to have accurate data input, right, you're going to want to be able to build models, trend analysis, predictive models, machine learning models that are robust, but ultimately that has to be explainable. So, which means it's consumable. Whether it's timely or actionable in that order, but yeah, if people then don't know what to do on it, what's the point? It's just information with no action, and it probably is going to just actually give them more stress. And ultimately, if it's not timely, then what's the point, right? We can lose, especially in some of the projects that I'm sure a lot of people here involved in. We can lose hundreds of thousands of pounds in minutes if we don't make timely decisions. So I think they're all equally important. What I'm going to touch on, I'm not going to touch on data analysis and cleansing and input. I'm not going to touch on models, and I'm not going to touch on explainability of machine learning models or anything like that as well. I'm going to touch on some of the consumable, actionable, and timely stuff on the right-hand side. So, nice little thing from Marketunist that I saw on LinkedIn just yesterday, which was very timely. We've all seen massive management information and KPI dashboards, and how often do we measure what people's understanding of them are, and actually how much they're using them. Deep down, we just want to be understood as analysts, as data practitioners, as project leaders. We just want people to understand us and value what we're trying to tell them. That's the key. Yeah. I want to give a wee bit of thing, but I'm going to just use this hypothetically because I know everybody will be on mute and stuff. Not hypothetically, but rhetorically. So it's a bit about comprehension. So when we think about data, one of the first things we should think about when we're, designing data solutions and actually thinking about the output and how we're going to communicate it is comprehensions, people's comprehension. So if I was to ask you, can anyone give me an approximate scale and size of what 480 billion plastic bottles would look like? Would you be able to tell me it? I'm sure we could all discuss it for a long time, but I don't think anybody probably could give me a good approximate scale just now. Even if I said, well, what if you just give me 1 million plastic bottles? Could you give me an approximate scale of that? And again, most people go, oh, okay, 1 million seems a lot smaller than 48 billion, but what size of plastic bottles? And actually, what does 1 million look like? I'm not sure I could give you an approximate scale and the size of 1 million plastic bottles together. You might have a better chance. The key at this point is if we give people large numbers that are uncomprehensible to them, or they don't have any context to, they won't really do anything with it. They'll either be stressed by it because actually it's just overwhelming, it's too big, or they just won't resonate with them. And either way, you fail to make any impact on saying those things. So if I want to encourage you, for example, or even plead with you to say, stop, save the planet, stop buying mineral water, because in 10 years, 480 billion plastic bottles of plastic drinks bottles were sold, predominantly from mineral water and Coca-Cola and stuff like that. That's how many plastic bottles were sold just to consume that. If I told you that every minute 1 million plastic bottles were sold, obviously, again, you might get a little bit, more impacted by that. You might listen a bit more, but still, it's really incomprehensible to you. So, giving you big numbers like that, trying to make a point by saying it's really, really big and awful, doesn't really help me make a decision, and doesn't get actually the right reaction you want from your consumer if you're trying to convince them of something. So here's an example of data visualization that might help. So that is 48 billion plastic water bottles compared to Manhattan. And that is what's sold in 10 years alone, and it's growing all the time, the rate of sales. So if you want to give people an idea of the problem with creating with plastic bottles and a data visualization, don't say 480 billion means nothing. That might help. Even that is a bit out of context. I can't really comprehend that. Does that really, it's not real. It feels alien. So, I'll just click into the graphic behind it. This is a really good visualization. So hopefully you can see this. This is the rate of plastic bottles being sold in a minute. And as you can see, I now start to feel a little bit anxious about this because I can see myself getting buried. I can actually compare this to a dumper truck, a bin lorry. So that starts to feel powerful to me. I start to get emotionally attached to that. So you're now starting to connect with me and say, okay, now I understand the impact. I once did a project years ago when I was a consultant with Kellogg's. It was a lean manufacturing project. And we were trying to show them into wastage on one of the production lines that was producing Kellogg's cornflakes. And actually, the thing we found most powerful was we showed it in the size of elephants. We actually, instead of saying in tons, we actually showed how many elephants we were wasting in cornflake spillage. And that really resonated with the audience as opposed to putting a flat number on a slide. So hopefully you get what I'm trying to say there. You're kind of going to make information contextual, and data visualization, data storytelling is really, really important to that. Let me go back to the presentation. One of the key things to this when we think about our data solutions, and this will be really important, I think, what's really, really great, the work that the PDA are doing and the project hacks and stuff are amazing. We're actually finding what's feasible, right? We're taking business problems and real project problems, as Martin said, and then we're trying to do hacks to find feasible. But we got to be careful we don't stop there, because quite often we can do a lot of great innovative things in technology and bring a lot of solutions because actually, hey, look what we can do now. We've got the technology wizardry, we've got the data wizardry, we can do this. You should use it, you might need it. But that's, and that's kind of what we've done for a long time in almost all aspects of innovation. We always either sit with a viable business problem or opportunity, or we look at a feasible technology advancement and we work from there. But more and more product design and actually the way we look at any solution design is all about starting from what's desirable by the human. Where do we start here? And that's one of the key things I want to try and implore on you when you're looking at your data solutions is start from what is desirable to a human. So how does a human really want to make a decision? What metrics matter to them, and how and when might they consume those? And that starts looking at things like design thinking. Really, I'm going to give you just snippets of things, and hopefully you'll go look at it and see how it can help you when you're actually trying to create some decisions, but more importantly, get people to use them. And design thinking's all, I'm sure you've done this in innovation. I'm sure you've done it in project ideation or continuous improvement stuff. You've all done it by different guises and names, but it really starts with empathy, really understanding the audience and who you're designing it for. And that's really important because you've got to understand, especially in data analytics, is what's the audience's data literacy? What's their language? How do they work and how do they consume information in their daily workflow? So you really got to think about that. Then you're going to start focusing on what's really important to them. What's the insights that really help that person get their job done? What really helps them deliver projects? And what's the job to be done that they really, really want to do? And then that's the route about idea. What if we could solve that? So often we start with I can solve something, I've got the technology, but actually, have we started with the real problem? Like, what's important to people? What job are they trying to do? Where are they getting really blocked? Where's the real pain points? And then ideate. and go, okay, what if we could solve it? What, I don't know if we have the data for this. I don't know if we can create the machine learning models, but what if? What if I could present you that answer or that insight, that data analytic with a next best action? What if I could suggest to you that, when you're sitting in a meeting, I could do a pop-up at any point in time that when someone asks a question, I can suggest you the most appropriate answer. Now, ideate the possibility and prototype it and see what that flows, like, and then test that, and then actually try to solve it. It's one of the things I think we should do in parallel to also trying to work out on the data analytics side. That can be anything from, one of the things we use a lot are design sprints. You might also look at Google Venture sprints, and these can be really, really, really powerful. Where do you focus your efforts? Because as we looked at before, there's so many things we could analyze in data analytics for projects, all those different factors that affect and influence projects. So actually trying to ideate, where should we focus? So design sprints and Google Venture sprints really look at sort of week-long problem solving, and it looks at where are all the problems. Let's go find the problems or opportunities, and then go, what if? And we use techniques like Crazy 8, where people can actually come up with what if the solution was this? I could present data to you in this context. I could give you estimated models. So as soon as you went and looked for a project, I could tell you the latest price of steel, and I could update all the estimates for you. What if those informations happen now? It's just crazy ideation. It's not about that. It's not about, is it feasible yet? You do a lot of voting. You try to find out what is the one big idea that actually feels like it's the most powerful. And the really important thing about this is you storyboard how it's going to affect people in their life. So actually, again, especially for data solutions, how are they going to consume that data and when? And actually, what's the expected result and behavior? So we look a lot at the behavior of data solutions. So if I present information to people, what do I expect them to do next? That's the true test of, did the data analytics work? Not could I get data analytics? Did people take action on it? And what behavior did we expect them to take? Or what was the unintended consequence, the negative behavior that we might see, and test that. So storyboarding can really help you do that as you're trying to form your data solutions. And one of those key things that is really behind that, that's really starting to look at behavior design. So I'm not sure if anybody here has been involved in behavior design or even considered it when they looked at project data analytics, but behavior design is really, really, really key to, are people going to use your output? Are they going to use your insights and analytics? So this is all looking at what motivates us and what gives us the ability to take action. And this is from Fogg's behavior model. I'm a big fan of BJ Fogg stuff, but actually there's a lot of behavioral design science that is fairly common, well understood, and has been there for decades, of how are people motivated to make a decision? What triggers them to make a decision? And it's obviously high motivation. Of course, you're going to be doing that, but obviously ability is a key factor as well. And obviously, you're going to expect people that says, well, as soon as it's easier to do, then I need less motivation to do it. But again, even if it's easy to do, obviously, and low motivation, I'm not going to do it. So what we want to find is those things here where people have a good balance of motivation versus ability. And that's really, really key for data analytics to drive decision making, is, are we giving people the ability to make a decision? That's key. So are our insights and our data giving people the ability to make a decision or to take action, to say, maybe update their project plans, or re-estimate or rebase them, versus motivation. And motivation can also be all those different stress factors, all those different competing factors that we talked about, that make people not always make the most obvious decision. I'm not going to say the right decision because it's all about motivation, but the most obvious decision. So, and that can also be about how we present information, the timeliness, and the motivation to act. So one of the things we do at Chat Tower, I'll just share an example here, is we always think about how do we present information, and what actions do we want people to take, and how we want them to feel when we're doing that. So this is a wee snippet from one part of Chat Tower. The that we use at start of day. So when we expect people to log into Chat Tower, we don't want them to be overwhelmed by information. So we could show them all the different projects, all the dashboards, everything on fire, things flashing. We could show them their Kanban that shows them all the risks, issues, tasks, actions they've got across all the projects they're working on, and things could be overdue out of date. We could show them all that. But we know that that would probably cause people to stress, and it probably cause them to, run away from it and not actually go and tackle it, most things. So they're going to have that flight response in there. So what we try to do is encourage, okay, where can I get you to start? What's most important to you? So, what's changed? This project has actually downgraded. I need you to look at that. I don't need you to look at all the other 20 projects you're involved in. Just look at this one first and go and click through. Or here's something you don't know. There's, completion rate in this project is actually going way down and things are way overdue. I need you to go look at that. But actually, the maximum we ever do there is 6 insights. But we've got thousands of them across all the projects. Even things like focus for the day that's where you've got far too many high priority tasks, risks, everything, things that are overdue. And what we're not asking you to do is go try clean everything up. What we do is we present a quick module that says, select the 3 things that are important to you. You can also quickly defer things if you go, oh, actually, you know what, I don't need to do that. And it's trying to get people to think unconsciously really fast how to clean up stuff, but it gives them positive reinforcement that they've started the day, they've cleaned up their tasks. And it gives them a reward. And also we are learning how they prioritize, and they have some priorities to go on. So when you're thinking about how you present information, well, think about the workflow. So this is talking about, if I present this to you at the start of the day, great, I can give you some insights to look at, I can give you some positive reinforcement to clean up some of your tasks, and that'll form habits. Hopefully over time, they'll start cleaning up the tasks by themselves, but I can positively reinforce that. And I think when you look at some of that, obviously Microsoft, Power Platform and stuff, again, you've got the ability to be pushing information out, not getting them to always look at Power BI or look at your dashboards and reports. You can go and share information in different contexts and take snippets of that to try and get the best behavior so people take positive action. Hopefully that makes sense and makes you think about some of the things you can do. The other thing to do, I don't know the source of this, but I stole it because it's lovely, is also think about what you do when you're presenting data. So any of you that have been involved in retail projects or customer projects will know about customer journeys. This is an example of a customer journey looking at utility AC Nest thermostat machines, right? What in any journey, and this is the same in projects. It's the same in decision making. It's the same in any small job to be done. When I'm doing a process, I've got a job to be done, and generally it's I want to get a result. It's not the process. So it's the emotional things you've got to understand that's going on when I'm trying to get my job done. When we present information along the way, so how we communicate, people are in different zones here. And what this is showing is throughout a customer journey here, the green bits here were when they were excited or when they were happy. The rest of it's actually when they're anxiety. I'm excited, I'm getting a Nest, but actually I don't know how to do it. Am I qualified? My zone's my house. I've not had an email yet. I've not had an update. What's going on? This, it seems complicated now. We're talking about support. Or how do I get help? Oh, I've now got it. Oh, that's fine. It's switched on. It's good, actually. It's quite nice. I could do this. Oh, wait a minute. What was the settings? Actually, was this worth it? Oh, my schedule's changed. I'm going to have to go update, learn all the thermostat again. Did my actual bills go down and end? And that's a job to be done. Actually, was someone was really implementing this to hope that they could have lower utility bills because they've got more efficient heating. That's the job to be done. Not all the other stuff about getting controlled heating systems, but getting a Nest system. And that's the bit we're trying to do with data. Now, all the way through this, you can see that there's a huge amount of data points, and that's the same in projects. So one of the things to really understand about that user journey and the customer journey and the job to be done that we're trying to do, and then align your data and analytics to it and present information. There's a really good example by a company called MicroStrategy that hopefully some of you are aware of. Big data platforming, data aggregation and data analysis and visualization company. But they had a really good thing. I think it came out a couple of years ago called hyperintelligence was the concept in zero click. And this sort of brings together a lot of those concepts I was just talking about there, where when people are trying to do a job, how can they get zero-click, just-in-time intelligence without having to go and find a data source, without having to go and interpret a report, and without having to interrupt their workflow. And this is really good, again, about helping people focus, just like we were trying to help them focus on Shark Tower. This is trying to help people focus, saying, well, I can stay in my workflow, but I can get the data I want. This example here, this can be embedded in Outlook, Microsoft Office throughout. It can be embedded in Excel. It can be embedded in web apps as well. And ultimately, it's bringing together multiple data sources within your organization or externally and creates what they call hyperintelligence cards that ultimately, if you find that thing, and this one was a company called Sierra, it will bring up a key data insight for you. Now, imagine if you had that running in a project. Every time you were speaking to a stakeholder, it brought up say someone gave you a stakeholder's name in an email, and you highlighted that, and it brought up an intelligence card that told you the stakeholder's division, what projects you were working on for them, when was the last time you talked to them, or a customer that told you your customer interaction, the last time they had a complaint, or price of commodities, anything else that you mentioned. So this is a way where we're talking about, okay, data intelligence, there's loads of it, but again, how do I present that just in time in the right context of where people are working so that it's actually consumable? The last bit, really, and I'm going to do some quick examples now because we're getting close to 1:45, and I want to finish up in a timely manner and give you some time for questions or anything, or just chit chat. So data story, what's important, and what do we really want to think about? So curation, first of all, it's understand what metrics are important to your end user. We've got lots and lots and lots of data in projects, but you've got to understand what's going to be the most impactful data we can use just now and what's going to be important to the person making decision. Then think like a journalist. So how do you communicate to your audience? Are you using their language? Can you simplify that down and get to the point so they can consume it quickly and know what you're trying to communicate with your data? Of course, make it visual. We are visual animals, so visualize it, make it consumable at a glance without detailed explanation. The other part is being able to make recommendations. I think if we stop there and we just flood people with data, as fancy and beautiful as it can look, if people don't really have a call to action, what's been asked of me here? What could I do? What's the next best action? What options do I have? Then they're going to be overwhelmed by it. So we have to help them make recommendations. And the last part is impact. And I think this is a bit that's overlooked a lot. And I think we're really bad at it in projects. We like to tell people things are going well or going wrong. We like to highlight things in analytics and data, but we actually don't do enough, I think, of really communicating the stakes to people and actually predicting not just the impact of action, but also the impact of inaction. And I can probably visualize, and I'm sure some of you might have had this concept of, we often write business cases. Let's use business case, for example, so our investment cases. We often write investment case saying, if we spend this money and go and deliver, we've got this opportunity. So that's our opportunity case. And that could be the same if you're making a decision in flight in a project. Okay, if we make this decision, we can, save ourselves £10,000, whatever. What we don't do a very good job of saying is, if we don't make this decision, if we do nothing from this point, actually, this is what's going to happen. So the opportunity loss, the do nothing business case, or the consequence of inaction. And that's one of the things also we should be doing when we're doing analytics, is trying to really make an impact. So give people the consequence so they actually have a motivation to change. So create that push in those factors that we talked about, and push them towards making positive decisions. So very quickly, last little bit for you in 4 minutes is, here's some examples of good and bad. This was taken from a blog last year, which I quite liked. So this is an example of COVID cases that was went last March in Singapore, and it's showing new cases and patient discharge. Data is all accurate. There's lots of information there. Bit of a problem. This is what's called chart junk. There is far too much information here that actually isn't calling anything out for me clearly. Too many data labels, too busy, too noisy. And it's not really, it's far too granular for a start on this timeline. And I can't really make any head and tail of any trends between the two different data series that are getting shown. so often you might go and say, well, that's a line chart. Let's go present that line chart now. Okay, that's first step. Again, now I've actually lost something. I don't actually know what any of the data points are. And again, it's too variable. It's up and down. So the axis is too small anyway. If you look at the y-axis, I'm only at 13 points. So again, it's not really good. It's not telling me much. But this could be another way of doing it. So this is the exact same data, but all we've done is do two side-by-side charts of it. So actually now I can compare two trends. And what we've also done is overlaid an average as well as those variable daily amounts, which is a lot easier to to consume and to start to see the trends on. So you can see already how much different that is to this chart. But it's the exact same data. And we've overlaid that and presented that to something we can understand. And I'm sure you've all seen this in the news as we've consumed COVID data. It's a really great example of data visualization and storytelling that's been going on throughout the last year. And one other example of doing this is just another example again where really think about the charting you're using, the visualization you're doing, the story you want to tell. So this is the same information, obviously just showing in a comparable divergent bar chart. And it's really easy to see sort of spikes against each other over time on the two different data series and maybe find some correlation there. But also think about what's the core metric? What do you really want to highlight to people as well? So again, don't use lots of data points everywhere. You don't have to show everybody you're working, but again, show some key, understand what the key metric is. Then finally, this is an example in project data. So this is what we do in Shark Tower. There's a bit of story of the evolution of project slippage model in Shark Tower. So this is a bit of an output on looking at the probability of completion. We're doing a fair bit of risk weighting, sensitivity analysis, and then graph modeling and network effects to try and come up with project slippage probability. Right? So I'm sure you've seen examples of this in some of the work you guys have been doing in PDA, etc. It's okay. It shows me different risk levels and probability, distributions, but it's not really telling me much unless I'm a data scientist. Even then, they probably would argue it's not a great example. So first step is, okay, do a little bit. And this is what we actually did. So this is the first step is, okay, we tried to show a graphical representation of the network effect of work breakdown and highlight which ones were having consequence. It's not that understandable, but you probably could be trained to understand it. And then we tried to show the probability and of the slippage, where we tried to show what was actually happening in the reference distribution and the simulated activity. And we can show a bit more information that the end consumer, the project manager, doesn't really care about, but it's good for data science explanation. So then we start to apply a little bit of user interface design. So this is when we start bringing in product design. Go, okay, well, what is the key? So I can actually show projected state. I can show probability curve because people want a bit of confidence that there's some science behind it. But ultimately, I can tell people that's projected thing. That's the information you need to know. But that doesn't really help me again as a project manager. All it's done is show me bad news. I'm like, well, okay, great, but explain it. What's going on? So the last part is not about explainability of how the machine learning models were working, but actually explaining what is having the impact of it. So going back to, can I explain this better? We actually then take another step and say, okay, well, that is your slippage model, trying to give you a little bit of an explanation of what's going on, but actually then showing you what's having the biggest effect, almost like automated critical path for you. And say, well, these activities here in the work breakdown, dependency flow are having the biggest effect. So just go focus on them first. Try planning them a bit better, do some deep dive, and that'll help you. Not saying go replan the whole project and show you all the risks and variables everywhere because it's just too hard to consume. So you can see what we're doing here now. We're talking about user experience. What is a project manager's job? Well, tell me where to focus. I want to go and help the project be successful. So hopefully that gives you, some thoughts of how you might represent some of your insights. So final inputs, accurate input data, robust models, explainable output, those are the foundations of any data solution. But the success of any data solution will be, is it consumable? Is it actionable? Is it timely? And hopefully you got some inspiration of, different things like that. Go look at things like design systems, system thinking, lean UX, product design, customer journeys, design sprints, data visualization, data storytelling. Those are all techniques that I believe that either you need to have some understanding of, or you need colleagues to work with you if you're the data scientist or the data analytics specialist that can help bring your information to life. So think of your solutions as products, spend time prototyping them to make sure if I could give you this answer, how would you use it and would it help you? Understand the sort of user journey. When are they going to be using that data and for what purpose, and how then do you want to present it to them? Because consider that behavioral psychological impact of it, and really help consumers filter and focus your data. Don't overwhelm them with thousands of spreadsheets and complex graphs. Try and focus on what really matters, what you want them to take away from your data. That is it from me. Hopefully that was an okay ramble through some thinking around psychology, design thinking, stress, and how you might want to adapt your product solutions for consumability.